All right, for our first topic, we want to talk about Uber partnering with Lucid and Nuro Robotics to build and deliver and operate robotaxis. Apparently, the deal is such that Nuro, which is a provider of self-driving tech, is partnering with Lucid to provide them that tech for their cars, and they will be fitted at the production line, on the production line in the factory. And then Uber is investing in Nuro and buying the Lucid cars. Apparently, they're starting with a fleet of 20,000 cars. So the deal is between Nuro, Lucid, and Uber. Uber, of course, provides the network. They're Uber. Lucid is a pretty well-known EV manufacturer. They have some amount of volume. They're not totally newbies. There are quite a lot of cars on the road. They're probably not as big as Tesla or BYD or those guys. And Nuro is a startup. They've been doing actually food delivery apparently for quite a while, quite a few years, and decided to pivot to being kind of OEM white label technology providers. Underneath them actually is NVIDIA. They're using the NVIDIA Thor SoC, a system on a chip. And so it really is an NVIDIA-powered Nuro technology baked into the Lucid cars and purchased by and operated by Uber. Uber is going to buy initially 20,000 of these. They're investing in Nuro, taking an equity stake, and they're going to be rolling them out in pretty short order. Now, of course, this comes in the face of Waymo, Tesla. Tesla hasn't done anything, but Waymo's real robotaxi service, Tesla's rumored bullshit Elon Musk ambition that has not done anything actually about, and Zoosk and other robotaxi players all coming in to compete with Uber. This is really interesting, right? Uber has historically tried to be asset light. They have owned assets, but not that many. They have had their own autonomous vehicle department for a while there. While I was there, the ATG, Advanced Technologies Group, they were trying to build self-driving cars under Travis. That got nixed under Dara and his effort to go public and go profitable. Travis was once fond of saying that robotaxis, autonomous driving, was existential to Uber, an existential threat, and that we needed to nail down ATG. Many saw that as a strategic misstep to cut that department. I'm sure there were very real pressures to get to profitability or get to break even and get to public markets. But it has been a big strategic question for Uber, and this is, I guess, part of their answer. It's an answer they needed to have, and a partnership they need to have, and I imagine part of a mix of things they're going to try to do. Dara is very much a coalition builder. He's inviting everybody onto the network. He's saying, hey, we can get you demand. Put your autonomous vehicles on us. But so far, Tesla has demurred. Waymo is sort of, half in, half out, and they need their own proprietary supply that they can control. Yaniv, what do you make of this?
Just so I understand, is Uber actually owning the assets? Is that the idea here, that they'll be owning the vehicles?
Yeah, my understanding is they're investing in Nuro and they are paying Lucid for these vehicles. They're buying them. There might be some clever, financing mechanism going on underneath. Uber is very clever about creating holding companies and whatever, but at the end of the day, they're making these assets happen. They're under Uber's control.
So that's definitely a departure, as you noted, Chris. Uber has always been asset light. The magic of Uber is they never owned anything, right? They just provided the distribution.
That is a little overstated. Uber has owned things from bikes through Jump and to cars in some cases, but yes, majority asset light.
That's right. So the way I'd view this actually, Chris, I'd be interested in your thoughts, is as a hedge, right? Because like you said, at the moment, I would consider Uber and Waymo to be maybe frenemies, is how I'd think about it. Waymo have a booking app that competes with Uber, but they don't have the same liquidity as Uber, right? All they have is their autonomous vehicles. Uber have the network and they have access to Waymo, but as you said, they're worried a bit about having a dependency on Waymo. Now, the reason I think it's a hedge is because I think ultimately Uber and Waymo are a great combination. One of the financial challenges of owning a fleet of robotaxis, as Waymo does, is the problem of cyclical demand, right? So imagine over the course of a 24-hour period, right, you have peaks and troughs, same as traffic, right? You have peak hour, you have times when things are underused. And what that means is you have a situation, if you have a fleet of vehicles where either you massively over provision to meet the peak in which case your vehicles are being underutilized and that really affects your cost structure. Or you don't have enough vehicles to meet the peak, in which case you don't have enough vehicles to meet the peak and your customers are not very happy with you. One of Uber's many clever things, of course, Chris, was surge pricing, which was actually a way of elastically growing and shrinking, I guess, the size of the fleet over time. But that's something you can only do if you do not own the fleet yourself. Another bit of genius of Uber's asset light model. So really, the way you'd sort of think about what's the future of ride sharing is you have a base load of autonomous vehicles that kind of roughly matches the lowest demand of the day. You're like, okay, these cars can be operating 24 hours a day or close to it, right? And then you need ride sharing, like classic driver owned vehicles that are elastically available to meet periods of greater demand. So, in other words, Waymo's economics on their own are not that great. Uber's economics on their own are not that great because robotaxis, obviously, over time, should be cheaper to operate than ride sharing with a driver. So, really, these things go together. I would say that this is an expensive hedge, meaning Uber does not want to be beholden to Waymo, but ultimately they're probably better off with Waymo. And yes, Tesla's challenges, of course, show that getting things right with autonomous vehicles and being able to operate in many markets is actually really difficult. And Waymo is currently the only player there. So I think this is like Uber saying, maybe we shouldn't have disassembled ATG. Maybe that was a smart hedge and we're going to bring it back. But I still see the future as being Uber plus Waymo.
Yeah, you mentioned they're frenemies. I would describe it as a marriage of convenience or an open marriage. Waymo is encouraged, welcome on the Uber platform, and Waymo has its own thing going on with its primary relationship being its own app. Dara has openly invited Elon Musk to make Teslas available on the Uber network. He's basically taking this kind of Switzerland statesman, all are welcome approach. You could liken it to Apple has their own stores, and there are little mini stores inside Best Buy and JB Hi-Fi, right? You can buy stuff you can buy Rode mics or Shure mics on Amazon, and you can buy them on Shure.com, right? And so Uber wants to be the Amazon of everything, the Amazon of services, and I think that's a smart strategy. I think Dara is a really thoughtful coalition builder, and something that Travis really struggled with. It's just, Elon doesn't want to play nice, and Waymo thinks that they're doing pretty well with their own app and doesn't want to be on Uber all the time in all cities.
It's slightly more complicated than that, though, right? Because like you said, this is a departure from Uber's traditional asset-light model, and you have to ask yourself why. And the answer is market concentration, right? Because when you've got every individual driver owning their own car, they're largely fungible. Uber is the network, they're in control, right? You're like, oh, if one driver withdraws their services, we have another 100 drivers happy to take their place. The problem is, what happens if Waymo want to withdraw their services? There isn't really anyone to take their place. I think Uber would have been much happier in a world where there were 10, 20, 30 providers of autonomous vehicle fleets. Then they wouldn't be doing this. They're doing this because they really, at the moment, only have one option for partnering, and that's Waymo. And that means that the leverage is on Waymo's side, and they don't like that. So this is an attempt to gain some of the leverage back for themselves. And that's why, as I said, I see it as a hedge. I imagine if over the next few years, the autonomous vehicle world becomes less rarefied and we get all of these competitors, this partnership and this whole model will quietly go away.
It's a hedge in the sense that they do not have a competitor to Waymo that is viable yet, and they may be expected to have one. So they expected the other players to move a little quicker, and they thought they could play them off each other. But also, it's to continue the Amazon analogy, Amazon also has Amazon Basics, right? And they have their first party fleet, if you will, of products that make sense for them, so they can iterate, they can learn, they can innovate, they can proof of concepts. I used to be a purist in this world where I thought if you're the developer platform, you shouldn't have the application layer. It's cannibalistic to your partners. And then I saw, Microsoft Surface and Google Pixel, and I was like, oh yeah, you actually have to set the bar and demonstrate to your partners how this stuff actually works. I think even in a world where there are multiple players, many of them competing against each other for inventory and placement on Uber, Uber probably still needs to know how to operate these first-party vehicles and modify them and add extra APIs to them and prove to their partners, like, this is how you do it and how you do it well. But I do think in the short term, they need to do this. They need to do this, and they need to do it for all the reasons you said. Travis would always say, in the existential question of like, are we going to go fire all the drivers and put them out of work? He would always say, guys, there's so much demand, there will always be drivers for all the foreseeable future. The drivers are a huge part of the network, and at best, we can start to take some of the baseline load with automation, which will drive down the overall cost to operate the network. But we will always need drivers, especially in peak times. And so you're absolutely right on those economics. We've talked about that on the show a few times. Surge pricing wasn't so much the mechanism for doing that. Surge pricing was the mechanism for the feedback loop from the marketplace. It was a signal to the drivers and an incitement to the drivers to get on the road at the right time. But the idea of a hybrid network with drivers and autonomy has been part of the story at Uber since I was there, I should say. It's just taken a lot longer to play out.
My point with surge pricing is that you will always need an elastic fleet, and you can only have an elastic fleet when you basically have this traditional ride-sharing model where the cars are used for other things at other times. You don't own them, and you can pull them in when you need them.
I actually just posted about this on my newsletter, the idea that an app is not a business. And taxis thought that the thing that Uber was doing that was killing them was having an app. And they just launched an app, and taxis wondered why it wasn't working. The innovation of Uber, as we're all saying today, Yaniv, is the entire business model is different. And one of the ways it's different is that it was asset light, and the drivers weren't on payroll. And so that it was an elastic supply. And that was a huge difference from taxi, and allowed them to compete in a way that taxi could never compete. And so it was a very valuable dynamic. So that's our thoughts on Uber, Waymo, Tesla, and the new deal between Nuro, Lucid, and Uber. What do you guys think? Do you think Uber's in a really strong position, or Waymo and Tesla ultimately are going to win the day? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments.